Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. This is video number 25 in our study of 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and the resurrection. We've been taking a casual look at what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, 20 and following. And I really want to focus this morning on the significance. Now, I've already touched on it, but you just got to catch the power of the significance of what Paul says in verse 20 and following, where he says, "But now Christ has become the first fruit of those who had fallen asleep." I have asked the question, what does first mean? Because this is incredibly significant. Most of the time, commentators come to this word first fruit here in this passage, and they say, well, it obviously cannot mean first, because number one, their presupposition is that Paul is discussing physical death. In 1 Corinthians 15, they are convinced that Paul is promising a future physical resurrection, of which Christ's physical resurrection was the forerunner. And so because their focus is strictly and solely on physical resurrection, they encounter Paul's use of the Greek word first fruit, or the word first fruit, aparche, and they say, well, Christ obviously was not the first person to be raised from the dead. Is that not self-evident? So the commentators and the Bible students say, well, Paul's not actually talking about first in sequence, first in order. What Paul's talking about is first in rank. He's the first person to ever be raised from the dead, never to die again. He's the first person to be raised in a glorified body. Well, number one, the Bible never says that Christ came out of the grave in a glorified body. I understand that's a common belief. I understand that an awful lot of people say, yes, he was glorified, had his transformed body when he came out of the grave. I do not believe that is accurate. I do not believe that is biblical. I will address that subject a little bit later on. But the argument is made that Jesus was first not in time, but first in rank. Well, first of all, we need to understand that the Greek word aparche means first. Can it, in some context, refer to rank? Yes, but context must demand that, and it doesn't in 1 Corinthians 15, and let me prove that. Paul goes ahead to say, "For as in Adam all men die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive." Christ, the first fruits, those who are his at his coming, then comes the end. Did you catch that? Christ, the first fruit. Let me read it. As in Adam all men die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive, each one in his own order. Christ first fruits. Afterward, those who are Christ at his coming, then comes the end. Now, it's important for you to understand that we have a very distinctive order of Greek words. And we have a very distinctive word. Each in his own order. This is from the Greek word tagma, and it means arrangement. And I have lying in front of me here the Exegetical Dictionary of the New Testament by Balls and Schneider. And I could drag almost any lexicon off the rack, and it would say the same thing. That Paul is discussing sequence of events because we have a couple of factors here. Number one, tagma itself means sequence of events. It is not a word that fundamentally denotes rank or order. Now, it means rank in the sense of the order of rank, not in importance, but in order of arrangement. Here's the first, here's second, here's third, here's fourth, etc. Tagma indicates order of arrangement. That's one of the very first keys. It's not rank. It's not importance. It is order of occurrence. That is then driven home when Paul elucidates what he means by tagma. Christ, the first fruit. Well, we have harvest imagery here, and harvest imagery is the first fruit was what? The first. The first in order, not first in rank, but first in order. Now, you may have an attachment of rank with the first, as in firstborn son, etc. But first fruit and firstborn means first. Then notice what he does. Each in his own order, Christ the first fruits. Afterwards, Greek word epaita, those who are Christ at his coming. Then, ita, comes the end. So, we have Paul using the Greek word tagma, which means order of sequence. And he illustrates that by saying Christ is the first fruit. Then, those who are Christ at his coming. Then comes the end. Well, the end is the end of the sequence, the temporal sequence. Now look, folks, this is absolutely devastating to the traditional view of resurrection. Absolutely, 100% falsifies the traditional view of 1 Corinthians chapter 15. I've already run out of time in this video, so I think I'm just going to keep my same shirt and sweater on, and I'm going to give video number 26 as a direct follow-up to every man in his own order, tagma, Christ the first fruit, aparche, then epaita, those who are Christ at his coming, then ita, comes the end. Because like I said, folks, this is devastating to the traditional view of 1 Corinthians 15. Look, if you want a study of the harvest imagery and Christ as the first fruit, you need to get a copy of my book, Who is This Babylon? You know, Revelation 14 talks about the harvest. The time of the harvest had arrived. Matthew 13, time of the harvest. John the Baptizer, time of the harvest. The time of the harvest is an incredibly significant eschatological motif found throughout the New Testament, and it invariably points us to the end of the Old Covenant age, the harvest of the Old Covenant age in AD 70. Go to my website, www.bibleprophecy.com. Order a copy of Who is This Babylon? Make a note that says you saw the offer on YouTube or Facebook, and I'll refund your shipping. All right? Thanks so much for joining me for this morning's musings. I will now close out number 24, and we'll get to number 25 on Christ, the first fruits, and every man in his own order.